Chinese president and DPRK top leader exchanged congratulations to mark the 70th anniversary of their diplomatic relations. Standoff over calls for an international negotiator to help Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan agree on Nile River. And to spank or not to spank your children, African countries grapple with dilemma of corporal punishment. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. Here are more stories you can expect in the hour. An Ivorian company gives a second lease of life to electronic equipment to spur a circular economy. And in sports news, DSTV gives Ethiopia marathon gold on the penultimate day of the World Athletics Championships. Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping and DPRK top leader Kim Jong-un exchanged congratulations to mark the 70th anniversary of their country's diplomatic relations today. President Xi said the country's friendship had stood the test of time amid changes in global affairs. He also said ties had grown stronger and gained support of the people. Kim said the DPRK would carry on building ties with China as well as promote future cooperation. Let's take a look at the 7 decades of China-DPRK ties.
The most recent meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and DPRK leader Kim Jong-un took place this June. Welcomed by Kim at the Pyongyang Sunan International Airport, President Xi kicked off his state visit by reviewing an honor guard. As the first visit to the state by a top Chinese leader in 14 years, President Xi said he came with good wishes of carrying forward the two countries' friendship and writing a new chapter in bilateral relations. The meeting between the two leaders addressed various issues and aimed at diversified cooperation. But a more important issue is regional peace and stability. Xi expressed hopes that the two countries would deepen communication and push for progress with talks and negotiations regarding the Korean Peninsula. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un stressed that his country has made significant efforts in easing tensions on the Korean Peninsula, adding Pyongyang would exercise patience and continue to work with all parties to find a resolution. Calling for a new development of relations between China and the DPRK, this is the 5th time leaders from the two countries have met since early 2018. Kim Jong-un's first visit to China came in March 2018. When both sides agreed to build on the friendship between the DPRK and China and to deepen their exchanges in the future. Less than 2 months later, Kim visited China again in May, this time in the beautiful seaside city of Dalian, in China's northeastern Liaoning province. President Xi said China supports the DPRK's talks with the United States on the Korean Peninsula issue. A week after the summit, Kim paid his 3rd visit to China. This time, President Xi said China will always support the DPRK in developing its economy and improving the livelihood of its people. And in January 2019, Kim visited China again. During the visit, both leaders agreed to push relations to a new level. The young DPRK leader also celebrated his 35th birthday in China. China and the DPRK's relationship has a long history. The DPRK was one of the first countries to set up diplomatic ties with the People's Republic of China, just 5 days after the PRC was founded on October 1st, 1949. The relationship was put to the test within a year with the outbreak of the Korean War. More than 100,000 Chinese volunteers died to defend the DPRK's national security and help Pyongyang driving American forces back. Following the war's end in 1953, Beijing provided extensive economic support to Pyongyang. In 2009, a year of friendship to mark 60 years of diplomatic relations was declared. President Xi Jinping has put much emphasis on the ties with the DPRK, describing the relationship as a treasure created by generations of leaders, a bond that will only grow stronger.
Well, the Egyptian state, with all its institutions, is committed to protecting Egyptian rights in the river Nile waters. That's according to the country's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. His comments followed deadlocked negotiations with Ethiopia and Sudan on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam being built on Africa's longest river.
Irrigation ministers from Sudan, Egypt and Ethiopia on Saturday concluded a deadlocked 2-day meeting in Khartoum over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Egypt, a downstream Nile basin country, is concerned that the construction of the dam might affect its annual share of the Nile River water. In a post on his official Facebook account, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stressed that Egypt continues to take necessary measures at the political level and within the limits of the international law to protect these rights. Rights that the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has repeatedly vowed the construction of the dam will not harm. Ethiopia and downstream Sudan eye massive future development benefits from the dam. Ethiopia started building the dam in 2011, and it is expected to produce over 6,000 megawatts of electricity and to be Africa's largest hydropower dam upon completion. The GERD, extending on an area of 1,800 square kilometers, is scheduled to be completed in 3 years at a cost of $4.7 billion. This, Egypt believes, will cut into its 55.5 billion cubic meter water share. The reservoir, whose total capacity is 74 billion cubic meters, may take several years. Ethiopia has asked to fill the dam in 5 to 6 years. However, Egypt seeks to prolong the period to 7 years to avoid the negative effect of water shortage, which is the main point of their talks. Egypt and Ethiopia do not have a formal water-sharing agreement. Under the 1959 Nile Waters Agreement between Egypt and Sudan, Egypt takes 55.5 billion cubic meters of water from the Nile each year, and Sudan takes 18.5 billion. The agreement was reached shortly before Egypt began constructing the Aswan High Dam. Ethiopia, however, was not part of this agreement and therefore does not recognize it. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Well, for more insight into this story, let's bring in CGTN correspondents Adel and Maruhi in Cairo and Giram Chala in Addis Ababa. Thank you so much for joining us, to you both. Adel, I'm going to start with you. We hear that the Egyptian government is calling for a negotiator. What is your understanding on why that is?
Well, basically, after 4 years of direct talks between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan, Egypt now realizes that the talks are going nowhere. Egypt has shown full support to Sudan's construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam. 2015, they signed a declaration of principles document that gives Egypt full support to the construction. However, this same document insists that no harm shall be done or affect any of the 3 countries, mainly the upstream countries, Sudan and Egypt. And after 4 years, Egypt has reached nowhere, specifically when it comes to the timeline of filling the dam reservoir, which to Egypt is quite crucial, as it will affect the flow of the River Nile from the Blue Nile, the main artery of the River Nile that comes from Ethiopia. And also, Egypt has not reached with Ethiopia any talks to try to put a framework for the technical management of the dam, 2 of the very crucial points that will actually give an indication to the impact that the dam will have on Egypt. And it's quite variable. The management and the filling of the reservoir both could have a direct impact on Egypt's share of water, which is already at a critical level. And after reaching this deadlock that Egypt announced on Saturday, according to the same document that the 3 countries have agreed on, that they can ask for a mediator or a 4th party to get involved in the talks. However, this must be by the approval of all 3 countries, according to the declaration of principles document in 2015.
Adel, thank you for that. I'm going to be coming back to you just now, Giram. On the back of what Adel has just said, Ethiopia says that it will not accept a 3rd party in these talks. Do you, I'm sure you do know this, but could you please just tell us why you think that is?
So this is from the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry. Ethiopia is saying that the tripartite committee that comes from Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt have been trying to solve some of the problems and even iron out the differences these 3 countries have when it comes to the construction of Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam. And of course, the deadlock has been seen in Egypt a few weeks back and now in Sudan. So here is what Ethiopia is saying. In the first place, this is a problem that Egypt has, that it comes from not understanding what the subject matter is. This is technical. Egypt wants to, give ideas how the dam should be operated, how it should be managed. That's what Ethiopia is saying. And Ethiopia says, look, we have this dam constructed on our own, with our own efforts, and we have been reiterating time and again, including for the international community through the president very recently at the UN Assembly, that the dam's construction will not harm not only Egypt but other countries on a downstream region. So there is no worry here, but we have to still sit down and talk about it. Technical issues, however, should not be solved by political negotiations. And there is no need at this point, therefore, that another third party, this time the United States, should be included in these talks when the talks can, move themselves further if there are agreements to be reached, when the three parties are on board, all of them together. Now, this stand of we don't need a third party to solve our problems because this issue is technical and we can only solve it through the science and study group that the three countries have formed is not only an Ethiopian stand, it's also the stand of Sudan. So Ethiopia and Sudan are on the same page. Let's solve our problems. This is technical. It doesn't have anything to do with political issues. No third party. Let's meet again, talk about it, but no third party. So Egypt needs to come on board, and that's what the Ethiopian government is saying that it is expecting to happen anytime soon.
Giram, we'll be back with you in just a moment. Adele, I'm going to bring you back in. Two attempts to reach a deal have failed so far. What do you think is going to be next now?
Well, basically, Egypt is at a situation where it's seeing the progress of the dam has been continuing regardless to the talks that is ongoing. Egypt has been quite flexible in its demands. It has, first it started by asking for at least 40 billion cubic meters would be released from the dam annually, so as not to affect as much the share, 40 billion cubic meters, and Sudan, Egypt together, they consume 73 annually. That's nearly half the volume that both countries consume, which means that Egypt is quite flexible to resort to the reservoir it has at the Nasser Lake, while Ethiopia fills up the reservoir in a sort of a display of support. Egypt has also been trying to work out on a flexible filling of the reservoir plan. So instead of Ethiopia being fixed to a certain number of cubic meters to be filled annually, which, by the way, the numbers have not been released by Ethiopia yet, but Egypt wants Ethiopia also to be considerate that there are seasons of drought, and drought that can extend for a long time as well. So it doesn't want Ethiopia to fixate the volume of water it wants to reserve when there is drought happening and it's by natural causes that no one has influence at. That's the final picture for the Nile. The water itself, the water flows from Ethiopia to Sudan, which can take its share, and whatever remains will come to Egypt, which is already under the poverty line. So all of these situations and the lack of progress in the negotiations with Ethiopia and Sudan, Egypt is actually running out of options and has been focusing solely on negotiations and talks, and now these are not producing any positive outcome, at least from the Egyptian side, and that's why it is calling for international mediaries to try to step in and help resolve this deadlock.
Giram, I'm coming back to you now. Even as these efforts to reach a deal are being made, what's the progress on the construction of the Grand Renaissance Dam?
So this is a $4+ billion mega hydroelectric power generating dam that is under construction on the Nile in the Ethiopian border between Sudan and Ethiopia, that is. And it is going very well. 24 hours of work is being done. Close to 65% of work is completed. By 2020, production will be started. That's the schedule. 2022 will see the finalization of this grand dam, which is expected to generate 6,000 megawatts of electricity. By the way, not only for Ethiopia, but also for export purposes to Kenya, to Somalia, to South Sudan, even all the way to Tanzania and other countries as well. Ethiopia considers this as a regional project, and it should not be affected by any means necessary, while at the same time keeping the interests of Egypt and Sudan as well. Just to reiterate the point that Ethiopia was saying earlier, that Egypt's understanding of the dam's construction of it should not be constructed from before times has been changed into how is it going to be filled. And Ethiopia has put a timetable of 4 to 7 years based on the climatic situation in the country, the rainy season and whatnot. And 7 years is the maximum time given in Ethiopia. Says, look, we are building this dam not only to generate power, but to also have fisheries and other projects which is going to elevate people out of the bonds of poverty. So the construction, again, of the dam is going well, and Ethiopia still maintains the fact that we will not harm any country, including Egypt, while constructing this dam for the purpose of us, Ethiopians, and also for the region at the same time.
Thank you so much, Giram. Thank you, Adel. That was Giram Chala and Adel Ahmaruki just speaking to us about that story. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We're moving on. An historic ruling by South Africa's Constitutional Court banning child spanking has sparked an intense debate across all spheres of society. South Africa is riddled with high levels of violence, especially among women and children. Previously, parents were allowed to use spanking as a form of discipline, but that has now been banned. Julie Shire reports.
Children in South Africa silently suffer abuse in their homes. Half of the 1,000 children killed between 2017 and 2018 died from neglect and abuse. The Constitutional Court has now put a stop to it by banning spanking, a move applauded by child rights advocates.
The aim is twofold. Firstly, advancing children's rights and just making everyone understand that children are individual rights holders. And the second thing is that South Africa is a very violent society, and we have to understand this judgment in light of, the harsh realities of child abuse and violence against children in South Africa.
Discipline has been erroneously associated with punitive approaches and punitive responses. And of course, that may seem to have an immediate effect. But if we look at the bigger picture, it's a short-term impact, but of course doesn't make lifelong changes.
This is the first step in stemming the scourge of child abuse in South Africa, but there's still a long way to go in determining the regulatory framework and how such cases will be handled.
It's not about throwing every parent into jail or incarcerating families. A lot of work still has to be done, where government departments have roles and responsibilities, like, for instance, social development, ensuring that families get the necessary support in not repeating this kind of behavior.
South Africa joins a growing list of over 50 countries to completely outlaw corporal punishment. While some parents are opposed to the ruling, they will have to find different ways to discipline their children. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's now speak to Otoa Sifuna, who is a teacher here in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us, Otoa. Well, let's just speak about this debate, because when you go on social media and when this just got passed, we were seeing so many people commenting. Just give us a little bit about what your stand on the issue is when it comes to corporal punishment.
I think, honestly speaking, I, as a teacher, I think corporal punishment is totally outlawed. It is inhuman, if you did ask my honest opinion. Yes, as a teacher, we grew up being punished, but in psychology, there is what we call negative reinforcement. When you beat or you subject this particular student to corporal punishment, which in most cases involves very inhuman forms of administering punishment, the student cannot actually give positive feedback. And so I, as a teacher, I have established that when I use corporal punishment, and we used to use it in the past before the Teacher Service Commission totally eradicated it. Right now, if any teacher engages in this inhuman act of brutally punishing a student so that he or she wants a positive response from that particular student, you even stand a risk of being interdicted. So basically, out of my research and experience in the 15 years or so of teaching, I think corporal punishment does not produce results.
So Atoa, I think where a lot of this debate is going is that when it comes to what you've just said about corporal punishment in the schools,
Yes.
there seems to be general consensus that is completely out. Where the debate is coming in is about the parents
Yes.
spanking their children at home.
Yeah.
What are you hearing from parents saying about this?
Parents and parents are actually a divided lot. There is a parent who will come to school to pursue a disciplinary case of his or her child and say, Mwalimu, beat this daughter, beat this son for me. But the question I always ask them, why are you not beating them? We are in a very different legal dispensation, a human rights awareness dispensation. And so far, many of my colleague teachers have even faced serious legal battles because of spanking children at school. As we speak now, the Teacher Service Commission has interdicted quite a number of students. So yes, the parents are highly divided. And when they come to school to pursue a disciplinary case and they propose that we do spank, we sometimes, and that's why you visit any school right now, you must realize that there is a very robust guiding and counseling team. We sit down with the student, with the parent, and the teacher, and now try to dissect where is the root cause, where is the problem emanating from. Because honestly speaking, beating a child only makes him quite incorrigible.
You mentioned this right at the beginning of your interview where you were saying you remember the days
Yes,
when you were a
yes,
child getting these.
we were beaten. In
at
fact, I
school.
remember one of the teachers, we used to call him Jeshi, the discipline we actually gave him a title, the platoon commander. You see him and you freeze. You know, that kind of relationship where you see a teacher as a source of authority, as a disciplinarian, as somebody who can meet pain and punishment to you. What kind of relationship do you want with your student? You have to bring closer your students to you, that proximity between the teacher and the student, so that you can administer teaching and learning. A teaching and learning environment process cannot occur in an environment where a student is felt intimidated and through spanking and all other form of cruelty. Even animals, you don't just beat a dog like that. So I think I as a teacher, I want to congratulate, first of all, the Teacher Service Commission and a lot of our sober teachers who have come all this way. We have realized that even when we were beaten so mercilessly by our teachers in the past, it never, you can take an example of your own daughter or son. The more you beat him or her, the more he creates what we call in psychology adaptation. So what? Mom just spanked me, and that is it.
One of the things that I did want to ask you about that was just that what we're hearing, the argument is that, well, when you remember what you mentioned now of children being having
beaten.
this form of discipline at school, they were more disciplined, where the argument is now saying that we've lost that. What do you say to that?
I think if you did ask my very honest opinion, I would say that the discipline levels have degenerated not because of corporal punishment. There are so many other factors that have contributed to the degeneration of discipline levels in our schools. Things such as the use of access to social media, things such as lack of role models, things such as not clear mentors in the society and all that. But I can tell you that most likely we just feared the system, that when I do this, I shall receive 12 strokes of the cane. Maybe the discipline levels right now as we speak among our students has emanated not because they are being caned, but because of a very free, independent society that we even as teachers must be cognizant of the fact that there are so many factors now, even outside of the school environment. And some of the parents, and I'm happy that you mentioned the parents. When parents do not take their responsibility of parentage, there is the actual biological parent where you are given the ability to give birth to a child. But there is now the parentage bit of it, which most of our parents in Africa and I think in Europe and all over, they have relegated the duty of parentage to teachers, which is quite unfortunate. We spent we spent 3/4 of the year duration with students in school. they only spend a quarter of the year duration at home. And right now we are almost closing schools for the December holidays. You will hear a lot of complaints back at home. So we think as teachers, there's also issues emanating from home, where most of the parents have relegated the duty of parentage to schools. They are busy into businesses and other ventures. We go to the universities, they have gone back to do their PhD. They are doing all manner of things that will add value to their lives. But they are not realizing that they have a child to take care of. And that's why you see all manner of shenanigans in terms of behavior within our students coming up.
Thank you so much for joining us, Sitoa.
Yes.
It was good having you. Well, we are now going to take a short break and return. More news for you, including new reports indicate Ebola survivors likely to die within a year of being cured. We'll look at the reasons why. And a record label in Zimbabwe seeks to give impoverished youth a way out of poverty.
At the Great Wall of China. Ni hao.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. The Hong Kong High Court has rejected an appeal against the anti-mask law, which came into effect on Saturday. The appeal was filed by 24 opposition lawmakers who demanded an injunction to suspend the law. They argued that Chief Executive Carrie Lam illegally activated the emergency measure after bypassing the legislature to address the ongoing violent riots. Earlier, Legislative Council members and the law would not affect people's right to wear masks in public and other legal gatherings. They argue that similar laws have been implemented in a number of Western countries and say it could help restore social order. Well, over 7 million Tunisians are voting in the legislative elections to elect 217 MPs for the new parliament. More than 1 million elderly people aged between 65 and 90 are taking part. They're considered the most dedicated citizens to voting since 2011, along with thousands of handicapped citizens.
At 75, Mohammed is used to waking up early at 3 a.m. This time the old man headed to the mosque, then the nearest polling station, where he waited for hours. The doors opened at 8 for waiting voters like Mohammed. The old man is proud of voting in the second legislative elections after the 2011 popular uprising.
I'm voting for the future of Tunisia. I'm old, but my children and grandchildren deserve to live in peace and prosperity. That's why I'm voting for a better Tunisia.
Haluma was accompanied by her son. Although she's in a critical health condition, she insisted on voting for the new parliament.
I hope the new MPs will provide jobs for the unemployed youth and improve the situation of the poor and needy. I wish the best for Tunisia.
Bilal is a voter and an accredited election observer. The handicap did not prevent the young man from monitoring the whole election process, from the campaign until the voting day.
Today I'm voting and dedicating the whole day to a specific mission. All irregularities will be noted. The voters and the civil society observers are the guardians of elections and democracy.
The high participation of elderly and handicapped persons is a strong message to Tunisians and new generations that the future of Tunisia is still in their hands. The first round of the presidential election was marked by record youth abstention. People here say the new generation of disillusioned and unemployed youths should join their grandparents and vote massively in order to turn the page on years of economic difficulties and empty political promises. Arden Sheweshi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, moving on to Zimbabwe, where a career in music was previously viewed as a trivial pursuit that more often than not ended in reckless behavior and financial ruin. However, a record label in Harare's most impoverished suburbs is changing all that by helping youth escape social vices while giving them an opportunity to earn a living. CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya has more.
It looks like any one of the many run-down and overcrowded apartment blocks in the area. Its only distinguishing feature is the wall mural with cartoon characters. But there's no child's play going on in this third-floor studio. Zim dancehall is a Jamaican-inspired genre that's become the most popular amongst youths here. Chill Spot Records is its home.
We decided to stay in the ghetto and help the ghetto youths and also keep the fees low so that the ghetto youths they'll afford the studio recording. So we didn't go like in the venues like town. So for the rents to be expensive, to the studio fee will also go high. At times, some of them they won't afford even to pay the fee we charge. We end up recording them for free.
It's a strategy that's paid off, with a string of hits generated and several overnight stars created. That success is attracting more aspiring musicians. Among them, Bongri Fire, recording his first ever track, which he hopes will launch him onto bigger things.
You can't be lazy in the music industry. You need determination, which I have. I'm here because Chillspot has links in the industry. The minute you release your music, it will be played everywhere. It will be the talk of town.
Talk of the town. The record label derives its name from this very corner where its founders in years gone by would hang out doing nothing all day. Nowadays, they are anything but idle.
They are busy churning out the sound that's defining a generation and changing the face of their community.
Longbeki in Mbare, people used to say in Mbare there's a lot of thieves, but when we came with the music industry, even people who love to visit Mbare and come see Mbare, how Mbare is, because it's now free to walk in Mbare. Yeah.
There's no shortage of good vibes to entertain them when they do. Farai Mwakatuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, your business news is on after the break. Here's what you can expect. An Ivorian company gives a second lease of life to electronic equipment to spur a circular economy. And Cape Town International Airport carries Africa's hopes of winning the world's best airport title at this year's World Travel Awards.
The newly upgraded CGTN website offers optimized coverage of China and international affairs, as well as distinct voices from around the globe. Be the first to know the biggest political news and discover the background to the major decisions. Decode China with a different perspective and get a better understanding of how China sees the world. Go beyond the news with sharp opinions on the events shaping today's world and reveal a China you have never seen before. Listen to entrepreneurs for in-depth analysis of the economy and touch the pulse of new technology via our hands-on videos. Travel back in time with CGTN to learn about China's past and immerse yourself in Chinese culture. To discover the stories behind Kung Fu. Get the latest news on Chinese lifestyle, including travel, sports, and nature. Regular productions including Ask China put high-ranking officials on the spot, while C-Lab presents new ways of storytelling via cutting-edge technologies, and Global Stringer delivers unique videos from China and beyond. Take a look at the world from a different angle. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, to Cote d'Ivoire now, where a young company has decided to make a circular economy its top priority. The company, referred to as Baby Lab, seeks to give a new lease of life to electronic waste.
Baby Lab, as the young company is fondly referred to, is a fabrication laboratory whose goal is to recycle electronic waste in efforts to bring a new form of economy called circular economy. The company was initiated in 2014 in the Ivorian capital Abidjan by a group of young Ivorian computer scientists who sought to give IT equipment a second lease of life.
Here at Baby Lab, we receive a lot of electronic waste, and the goal is to rethink how to reuse them. You see, for example, this monitor was intended for the trash. We learned to reuse it, and with the help of craftsmen, we were able to transform it into furniture. And today, it is used as a bookshelf.
For robot manufacturing, there are parts that we always need. And to buy these parts, we need every time to place orders in Japan. Today, thanks to this 3D printer from our laboratory, we can now model some parts here locally. But for now, we can produce plastic parts because they are plastic filaments that we use to print.
The initiative has become a beacon of hope, offering employment to locals and free training for thousands looking for a better future.
I am a seamstress by profession. I came to learn computer science because I want the world to get to know me and I want to expand my network of customers. But the only way to achieve this is with the internet. I did not go far in my studies. I have always dreamed to learn computer science, but I never found an opportunity. And to be honest, it's here at Baby Lab that for the first time I touched a computer.
It's a forward-looking sector, and especially in the 21st century, where everyone is talking about digitization. So I thought, why not learn programming and specialize in it? Today, that's what I'm learning here at Baby Lab. I want to create websites and mobile apps in the future. It's my dream.
Baby Lab remains the first and only fabrication laboratory in Côte d'Ivoire, according to the founders. In addition to training the young adults, the startup offers training programs called Kid Lab for children between the ages of 6 and 16 years of age.
To South Africa now, where Cape Town International Airport is carrying Africa's hopes of being the first on the continent to win the world's best airport title at this year's World Travel Awards. The facility is in the running with many other major international airports, including firm favorite and perennial winners Singapore's Changi Airport. CGTN's Travis Andrews brings us this report.
Since its major refurbishment for the FIFA World Cup in 2010, Cape Town International Airport has been seen as one of the jewels in the crown of South Africa's tourism offering. A destination that processes more than 11 million passengers a year, with facilities and amenities to boot. This year, though, it's up for a major award. It could mean even greater things for the airport.
We have been named the Skytrax Best Airport for 4 years running. That's Best Airport in Africa. And also through World Travel Awards for 3 years running, we've scooped Best Airport in Africa. Now we are in the run for Best Airport in the world, which is obviously something that we're quite excited about.
The airport, though, does have strong backing, including the mayor, who is one of the facility's greatest supporters. He even hands out flyers encouraging passengers to vote the Cape's way. There are certainly many other additional ways winning the world's best title can be impactful, including with marketing the city as a top events destination.
It is another accolade that we remind people of. In every bid we do for every event, we remind people of the fact that we have that support. But it also features on all their correspondence and all their marketing. So it's another space where Cape Town sits prominently, where we've competed with the best cities in the world.
Cape Town is also competing against other cities, including Dubai, Cancun, and Melbourne. But with a bit of luck, this year's honours may just be heading to the southern tip of Africa. Judging from its previous performances, Cape Town International Airport should be a strong contender for this year's awards once again, and that could spell all kinds of benefits for the city. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, going back to one of our top stories, nearly 3 years after the deadliest Ebola outbreak ever was stopped in West Africa, a new research report indicates that Ebola survivors are very likely to die within a year of being cured. CGTN's Wilkes Tanyawa has been following up on this development, and she now joins us from Conakry, Guinea. Wilkes, you are basically was part of Ground Zero for the Ebola outbreak in 2013. What's the new research from what you're hearing?
Thank you very much. Well, in the report, researchers had studied about 1,000 Ebola survivors, and therefore it did seem ideal that while we were doing this report, for us to go to Guinea, which was essentially the epicenter of it all. And while we were here, one of the things that we found interesting that we noted was that there is still quite a bit of stigma around Ebola survivors, but we were able to identify one Ebola survivor who lost 7 family members and was able to tell us just what his thoughts on the study were and about life after Ebola. Here is his story.
40-year-old Kamara Fodi Abbas walks into his compound like a man on a mission. After a long day at work, he is coming home to his family and is determined to enjoy every bit of his second chance at life. It has been 2 years since Kamara recovered from his brush with Ebola. 7 members of his family didn't survive. Kamara was living in this very same compound when he contracted the viral hemorrhagic fever.
It was when one member of my family who was coming from Kindia in the countryside arrived, and we thought he only had malaria, but he had Ebola.
Every family member who had come into contact with a patient was sent to hospital.
At the hospital, they tested me and told me they would keep me for 72 hours. I ran away and hid, but later I came back.
Doctors treated Kamara until he recovered, but he had lost 7 family members and would have to start life afresh.
I'm so happy because I'm with my family. It's like I'm reborn.
Even now, the memories of the dead are still fresh. It is the story of Ebola survivors affected by an outbreak which started in Guinea and quickly spread to neighboring Liberia and Sierra Leone. The initial case was reported in December 2013. An 18-month-old boy from a village in Guinea was reportedly infected by bats. Poor public health infrastructure contributed to the difficulty surrounding the containment of this outbreak.
First matter was the weakness of the health system. So it wasn't easy to recognize the case.
With the help of organizations such as Doctors Without Borders and the World Health Organization, by 2016, the 3 countries were declared Ebola-free. But the scars remain. A new report by Lancet Infectious Diseases shows people who survive the Ebola virus infection often die a year after leaving hospital. The cause of death for over 60% of those who died within a year was tentatively attributed to kidney failure. It is a finding that some scientists believe needs further investigation.
There's a need to follow up on Ebola disease survivors because Ebola is a systemic disease. It's It's a disease that affects all systems in the body, all the organs, kidney, the heart, the lung. You have bleeding, so it's a very severe disease. The virus can persist in some body fluids, including, the semen and so on. So there have been studies to see how to also reduce the risk.
Kamara has only suffered minor ailments since. It is a bittersweet victory. He lost his loved ones, but he is still here, and after a period of loss and turmoil, life has new meaning. The mention of Ebola often sparks fear. However, here in Guinea, survivors have found hope and a fresh new lease of life, and they are determined to wring every moment out of their second chance at life. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN in Conakry, Guinea.
Well, we're back with Wilkester. Wilkester, what sort of follow-up mechanism is in place for these Ebola survivors, both in terms of health and in support to pick up their lives?
Well, one of the things that has happened is that definitely the health systems here in Guinea have been strengthened immensely so that now they are capable of tracing and just following up on the survivors, which was very, very important because it was important to know the origins, to know who had been exposed and to know the people around them. This has then led to the second phase, which one of the ways in which they were able to fight the epidemic was to have what they call ring vaccination. Ring vaccination basically means that everybody who was around a person who was believed to have been exposed was vaccinated. And with that kind of follow-up, it did create a buffer zone, meaning that everybody who had been exposed was therefore shielded from perhaps spreading it to people outside that circle. And healthcare practitioners were very, very particular about having social workers go down to the village, identify possible cases and have these people tested, and if they had been exposed, have people around them vaccinated. At this point, we will say that we have learned that sensitization is still continuing. When you speak to any Guinean on the streets of Conakry, many of them will tell you about what they've learned, how to prevent, about washing their hands, about identifying the symptoms, possible symptoms, and quickly reporting to the nearest healthcare facility for testing. So it is one of those things that is continuous. At this point, the healthcare practitioners are so conversant with this that Guinea was able to send a delegation to DRC to be able to also help them with their outbreak. But at this point, it is constant sensitization and the constant awareness that even though the disease has been eradicated, it could break out at any point and that the country does need to be prepared. So those are some of the preparations that the country is making in readiness for any other possible outbreak, while of course hoping that the disease has been eradicated and will not be coming back. Hannah.
Thank you so much for that, Wilkester. That was CGTN's Wilkis Anyawa, and she was talking to us from Conakry, Guinea. Well, let's now take a short break and return your sports news. Here's what's making headlines. Lisa DeSisa gifts Ethiopia Marathon gold on the penultimate day of the World Athletics Championships.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for